What would you do if you discovered the woman you loved was about to lose everything because someone she trusted was secretly destroying her from the inside? That's exactly where Jake Reyes found himself standing outside a boardroom door, holding evidence that could save Sophia Bennett's career or make him look like a lovesick fool grasping at conspiracy theories. But here's the thing. He wasn't supposed to be there at all. He wasn't supposed to fall for her, and this entire impossible mess started 3 months earlier with one catastrophic typo that changed both their lives forever. Jake Reyes was running late. Again. His 7-year-old daughter Emma had decided that Tuesday morning was the perfect time to announce that she absolutely needed her hair in French braids, something Jake had watched approximately 47 YouTube tutorials on and still couldn't master. The result was something that looked like 2 crooked caterpillars climbing the sides of her head, but Emma declared it beautiful, kissed his cheek, and skipped onto the school bus like she hadn't just made him 15 minutes late for the most important presentation of his career. Now he sat in his car in the parking garage of Bennett & Associates, one of Chicago's most prestigious marketing firms, trying to catch his breath and calm his nerves. His best friend Derek had texted him that morning with a simple message asking how the new job was going after 6 weeks. Jake had meant to respond with something professional, something measured. Instead, his thumbs betrayed him completely. He typed quickly, glancing at the dashboard clock. "Dude, my boss is so hot. Like ridiculously hot. I can't even focus in meetings. This is a problem." He hit send without looking, grabbed his laptop bag, and sprinted toward the elevator. It wasn't until he was standing in said elevator, rising toward the 14th floor, that he glanced at his phone and felt his entire soul leave his body. The message hadn't gone to Derek. It had gone to Sophia Bennett, his boss, the CEO, the woman he had just called ridiculously hot. Jake stared at his phone as the elevator climbed, watching those 3 dots appear beneath his message. She was typing. His boss was typing a response to his accidental confession that he found her attractive. He briefly considered pressing the emergency stop button and living in the elevator forever. That seemed reasonable. Emma could visit him on weekends. The dots disappeared, then appeared again, then disappeared. The elevator doors opened, and there she was. Sophia Bennett stood directly in front of the elevator, a tablet in one hand and a coffee in the other, her honey blonde hair pulled back in an elegant twist that somehow made her look both intimidatingly professional and frustratingly beautiful. Her green eyes met his, and Jake watched a slow, knowing smile spread across her face. "Mr. Reyes," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of someone who was enjoying another person's suffering entirely too much. "Running late this morning?" "Ah, yes. My daughter. Braids. He stepped out of the elevator, clutching his laptop bag like a shield. "Ems Bennett, about that text." "What text?" She tilted her head, the picture of innocence. "The text it was meant for, you see, my friend Derek, and you are right next to each other in my contacts, and... So you're saying you didn't mean to tell me I'm ridiculously hot?" Jake wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. He was 34 years old, a widower who had rebuilt his life from complete devastation, a man who had interviewed Navy SEALs and Fortune 500 executives in his previous journalism career without breaking a sweat, and here he was, rendered completely speechless by one amused eyebrow raise from a woman who was technically in charge of his entire professional existence. "I'm saying," he managed carefully, "that it was unprofessional and inappropriate, and I sincerely apologize." Sophia studied him for a long moment. Something flickered in her expression. Was that disappointment? Before her professional mask slid back into place. "The Henderson presentation is in 20 minutes. Conference room B. Try to focus this time, Mr. Reyes. Apparently that's been a challenge for you." She walked past him, and Jake caught the faintest hint of her perfume, something sophisticated with notes of jasmine, which absolutely did not help his focus problem whatsoever. If you're already cringing for Jake, hit that like button, because it gets so much worse before it gets better. And trust me, you're going to want to see where this goes. For the next 3 weeks, Jake existed in a state of perpetual embarrassment. Sophia never mentioned the text again. But there was something different in the way she looked at him now. A certain awareness, a subtle charge in the air whenever they found themselves alone in a room, which happened far more often than statistical probability should have allowed. Jake had joined Bennett and Associates as the new creative director, specifically recruited by Sophia herself after she'd seen his award-winning campaign work from his previous agency in Seattle. He'd taken the job because Chicago offered a fresh start for him and Emma, a chance to escape the memories of Seattle where his wife Rebecca had died 3 years earlier in a car accident that still haunted his dreams sometimes. He'd taken it because the salary meant he could finally afford the kind of stability Emma deserved. He absolutely had not taken it because Sophia Bennett had smiled at him during his interview, and he'd felt something shift in his chest that he thought had died with Rebecca. That would have been pathetic. He was not pathetic. He was just a single dad who had accidentally told his extremely accomplished, brilliant, beautiful boss that she was hot and now had to interact with her daily while pretending that didn't happen. Totally fine. "You're staring again," muttered Priya Sharma, the senior account manager who had become Jake's closest ally in the office. She was 31, wickedly observant, and apparently determined to narrate Jakey's humiliation in real time. "I'm looking at the presentation slides," Jake whispered back. "The presentation slides are behind you." Jake turned around. The slides were, in fact, behind him, on the screen, where he was supposed to be looking. Instead, he'd been watching Sophia as she discussed quarterly projections with the board members seated around the conference table. One board member in particular caught Jake's attention. Harrison Wells was 62, silver-haired, and possessed the kind of perpetual tan that suggested either excellent genetics or regular trips to destinations Jake couldn't afford. He'd been on Bennett and Associates board since before Sophia took over as CEO from her father 5 years ago, and something about the way he watched her made Jake's instincts prickle. It was nothing he could articulate. Just a feeling. The same feeling that had served him well during his journalism days when a source was hiding something. Wells smiled too widely, agreed too readily, and his eyes, whenever Sophia wasn't looking, held something that looked unsettlingly like calculation. "Does Wells seem off to you?" Jake murmured to Priya. "Wells seems like every other rich white guy who thinks he should be running things instead of a woman half his age," Priya replied. "So yes, but that's not exactly unusual." The meeting ended, and Jake began gathering his materials when Sophia's voice stopped him. "Mr. Rise, a moment." Priya shot him a look that clearly said, "Good luck," and abandoned him without a backward glance. "Traitor." Sophia waited until the room emptied before speaking. "I've been reviewing your campaign concepts for the Morrison account. They're exceptional." "Thank you." Jake felt absurdly pleased by the praise. "I mean it. The emotional resonance, the way you've connected their brand story to universal human experiences, it's exactly what we needed." She paused, and something in her expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I knew you'd be worth recruiting." Despite my tendency to send inappropriate texts, the words escaped before Jake could stop them. Sophia's eyes widened slightly, and then she laughed, really laughed. And Jake discovered that sound was now permanently filed in his brain under "things I would do stupid things" to hear again. "You know," she said, "most employees would be too mortified to bring that up. Ever. I have a 7-year-old. Mortification is my constant companion. Last week she announced to her entire class that Daddy cries during Pixar movies and talks to Mommy's picture before bed. I'm basically immune now." Something shifted in Sophia's expression. A gentleness that hadn't been there before. "She sounds wonderful. She's the best thing I've ever done." And her mother. Jake felt the familiar ache, duller now than it used to be but still present. "She passed away 3 years ago. Drunk driver? I'm so sorry." Sophia's hand moved toward his arm, then stopped, like she'd caught herself before crossing some invisible professional line. "I lost my mother when I was 16. Breast cancer. It's a particular kind of loss." "It is." They stood there in the empty conference room, and Jake felt something happening between them. Something that had nothing to do with accidental texts and everything to do with two people recognizing their own wounds in each other. "I should let you go," Sophia said finally. "I'm sure Emma's waiting." "How did you know her name?" Sophia smiled slightly. "You mentioned her in your interview. Multiple times. It was rather endearing, actually. Most candidates try to present themselves as having no life outside work. You talked about your daughter like she was the center of your universe." "She is." "I know. That's why I hired you." Jake left the office that evening with something dangerous blooming in his chest. Hope, possibility. The terrifying sense that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to feel something for someone again. He just wished that someone wasn't the woman who signed his paychecks. Over the following weeks, Jake and Sophia fell into an unexpected rhythm. It started with work, late nights collaborating on the Morrison campaign, their creative visions aligning so naturally that colleagues began joking about them sharing a brain. But gradually, it became more. She learned that he took his coffee with exactly 2 sugars and would place a cup on his desk during long meetings without comment. He learned that she rubbed her temples when she was stressed and started keeping ibuprofen in his drawer for the days when board meetings ran long. She asked about Emma, remembering details, the spelling bee, the upcoming dance recital, the persistent fear of thunderstorms. He noticed that she ate lunch at her desk alone almost every day and started inventing excuses to drag her to the cafe downstairs. "You're not slick, you know," Priya informed him one afternoon, watching Jake return from another, coincidental, coffee run timed perfectly with Sophia's break. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're falling for her." "She's my boss." "That's not a denial." Jake sighed. "Priya, even if I were, which I'm not saying I am, it would be completely inappropriate. There are HR policies, power dynamics. I have a daughter to think about. I can't risk my job because I have feelings." "But you do have feelings." "I have something. Something that makes you light up like a Christmas tree whenever she walks into a room." Jake had no response to that, mostly because it was annoyingly accurate. The thing was, Sophia made him feel like himself again. Not the grieving widower. Not the struggling single dad trying to hold everything together. Just Jake. The version of himself that could be funny and clever and creative and present. The version that had been buried under 3 years of survival mode. And increasingly, he suspected she felt something too. He caught her watching him sometimes, quickly looking away when their eyes met. She laughed at his jokes even when they weren't particularly funny. She found reasons to touch his arm, his shoulder. Once his hand when he'd handed her a document, and their fingers brushed, and neither of them pulled away for a beat too long. But neither of them acknowledged it. The elephant in the room grew larger every day, and they both kept pretending not to see it. Then came the night that changed everything. Jake was working late, the office mostly empty, when Sophia appeared in his doorway, looking like she'd seen a ghost. Her professional composure had cracked. Her eyes were red, rimmed in a way that suggested recent tears hastily wiped away. "What happened?" Jake was on his feet immediately. "The Morrison campaign." Her voice was barely steady. "Someone leaked our strategy to their competitors. They launched an almost identical campaign this morning. Morrison is furious. They're threatening to pull their account and go public about our security breach." "What? How is that possible?" "Only the core team had access." "I know." Sophia pressed her fingers to her temples. "The board is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. Harrison Wells is already circulating emails suggesting this represents a pattern of mismanagement under my leadership." Jake's journalist instincts flared to life. "That's awfully convenient timing for Wells." "What do you mean?" "I mean, he's been positioning himself as an alternative to you for months. Little comments in meetings. Building alliances with other board members. And now suddenly there's a crisis that makes you look incompetent." Sophia stared at him. "You think Harrison deliberately sabotaged? I think it's worth considering." "Jake, that's a serious accusation." "I know. That's why we need proof." Here's where I need you to pay attention. Because what happens next is the moment everything hangs in the balance. If you want to see whether Jake actually finds the evidence and whether Sophia survives this betrayal, make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment below telling me what you would do in his position. Would you risk everything to expose someone powerful? Jake spent the entire night digging. His journalism background had taught him how to follow trails that people thought they'd hidden, how to connect dots that seemed random until suddenly they formed a picture. He pulled email metadata, cross-referenced access logs with timestamps, and called in a favor from an old colleague who specialized in corporate forensic analysis. By 4 a.m., he had it. Harrison Wells had been accessing the Morrison campaign files remotely using credentials that shouldn't have been assigned to a board member. More damning, his personal email showed correspondence with a contact at the competing firm, correspondence that included attachments of Bennett and Associates' proprietary strategy documents. But there was more. So much more. This wasn't just about the Morrison campaign. Wells had been systematically undermining Sophia for nearly 2 years, feeding negative information to industry contacts, encouraging client defections, all while building a case that her leadership was failing, so the board would eventually push her out and install him instead. Jake sat back in his chair, exhausted and furious on Sophia's behalf. She had built this company into something remarkable, had earned every success through talent and grueling work, and this man had been quietly stabbing her in the back while smiling to her face. The board meeting was in 4 hours. Jake went home, showered, checked on sleeping Emma, her small face peaceful against her pillow, her stuffed elephant clutched in her arms, and drove back to the office with a folder full of evidence and absolutely no idea if he was about to be a hero or an unemployed fool. The boardroom was tense when he arrived. Sophia sat at the head of the table, pale but composed, while Harrison Wells held court at the other end, his expression sympathetic in a way that made Jake want to break something. The pattern is clear, Wells was saying. Under Ms. Bennett's leadership, we've seen 3 major client complaints this quarter, a data breach, and now this catastrophic leak. The board must consider whether new management. That's interesting, Jake interrupted from the doorway. Because I have evidence that the catastrophic leak was orchestrated by you, Mr. Wells. The room went silent. Every head turned. Sophia's eyes found his, wide with shock. Mr. Reyes, Wells said coldly. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is a closed board meeting. Then I'll be brief. Jake walked forward and placed the folder on the table. Server access logs showing Mr. Wells downloaded Morrison strategy files 6 days before the competitor launched their campaign. Email correspondence between Mr. Wells and a senior executive at that competitor, including attachments of our proprietary documents. Financial records showing unexplained consulting payments to Mr. Wells from 3 former clients who defected over the past 18 months. Wells' face had gone from smug to a shen. This is absurd. Fabricated. All of this has been verified by an independent forensic analyst whose credentials and methodology are documented in the folder. Jake met Sophia's gaze. Ms. Bennett hasn't been failing. She's been fighting an invisible war against someone who was supposed to be on her side. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Other board members flipping through documents. Wells alternating between denial and threats. Security being called. Lawyers being summoned. Through all of it, Sophia stayed composed, directing the response with the same grace she brought to everything. But when her eyes found Jake's across the room, he saw something there that made his heart stumble. Gratitude, relief, and something that looked remarkably like love. After Wells was escorted out, after the board voted unanimously to launch a formal investigation and expressed their unequivocal support for Sophia's continued leadership, after the remaining members had finally filed out murmuring apologies and promises, Sophia closed the door and turned to face Jake. You stayed up all night. I took a power nap in my car. Very refreshing. Jake. She walked toward him slowly. You risked everything, your job, your reputation. If you'd been wrong, I wasn't wrong. I knew I wasn't wrong. Because I know you, Sophia. I've been watching you lead this company for 3 months, and there was no version of reality where the problems were coming from your decisions. You believe in me that much. I believe in you more than I believed in anything for a very long time. Sophia was close now. Close enough that he could see the tears gathering in her eyes, threatening her professional composure. Close enough that when she reached for his hand, the touch felt like an answer to a question he'd been afraid to ask. I should tell you something, she said softly. What? That text you sent. The one about your boss being ridiculously hot. Jake groaned. We really don't have to. I never deleted it. I've read it, probably 100 times. Because every time I thought, maybe I was imagining things between us, maybe I was projecting, maybe I was being foolish, I would look at that text and remember that you felt something too. Sophia, I'm in love with you, Jake raised. I've been falling in love with you since you walked into that interview and spent 45 minutes talking about your daughter and made me realize that there were still men in the world who understood what mattered. Jake lifted his free hand to her face, brushing away a tear that had escaped. You know what the problem is with you being my boss? What? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm in love with you too, and I don't care about policies or power dynamics or what anyone else thinks. I just care about you. She kissed him first, or maybe he kissed her. Later, neither of them could remember who moved first, only that suddenly they were kissing in the empty boardroom with morning light streaming through the windows, and Jake felt parts of himself that had been frozen for 3 years finally beginning to thaw. There's someone you need to meet, he said when they finally broke apart. Actually, you've already met her, but she doesn't know she doesn't know. Emma, Jake smiled. Fair warning, she's going to interrogate you extensively about your princess preferences and whether you can do French braids. Because apparently, that's a crucial relationship skill. I can do French braids. You can? 3 younger sisters. I'm practically a professional. Jake kissed her again. Because he could. Because this was actually happening. Because life had apparently decided to give him something beautiful after all the loss. Introducing Sophia to Emma was the most terrifying thing Jake had done since becoming a father. He spent the entire drive home coaching Sophia on his daughter's favorite things and warning her about potential conversational landmines. You're nervous, Sophia observed. I'm terrified. Emma is the most important person in my life. If she doesn't like you, then we figure it out. Kids don't always connect immediately. It takes time. Trust. When did you get so wise about children? I'm not. But I'm wise about love. And I know that loving you means loving the life you've built, including the brilliant little girl at the center of it. Emma was waiting at the window when they pulled up, her face pressed to the glass in a way that was absolutely going to leave smudges Jake would have to clean later. She was wearing her favorite purple dress, the one she'd insisted on putting on when he'd mentioned they were having a special guest for lunch. And her hair was in 2 wobbly ponytails she'd clearly attempted herself. Daddy, she flew out the front door and launched herself at Jake's legs. Is this your friend? You said you were bringing a friend. Is she your girlfriend? Marco at school says his dad has a girlfriend and she lets him eat ice cream for breakfast. Would she let me eat ice cream for breakfast? Emma, sweetie, take a breath. Jake laughed and turned to Sophia. Emma, this is Sophia. Sophia, this is my daughter Emma. Sophia crouched down to Emma's level, meeting her eyes with total seriousness. It's very nice to meet you, Emma. I've heard so many wonderful things about you from your dad. Emma studied her with the unflinching assessment that only 7-year-olds can manage. Are you Daddy's boss? I am. He said you're really smart and you work super hard and you have pretty hair. Jake felt his face heat. He had definitely said those things. In the privacy of his own home, where he thought Emma wasn't listening. Sophia's smile widened. Well, your dad is really smart and works super hard, and he has pretty good hair himself. Emma giggled. His hair does a funny thing in the morning. It stands up like this. She demonstrated with her hands, creating a visual that was unfortunately accurate. I bet it does. My hair does something similar. Maybe we can compare notes. Do you know how to do braids? Real ones. Because Daddy tries, but they come out all bumpy. I do know how to do braids. Would you like me to show you sometime? Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. She grabbed Sophia's hand and started tugging her toward the house. Already chattering about her braid preferences and her extensive hair accessory collection and whether Sophia had ever tried space buns, because those were very hard but very cool. Jake followed them inside, watching this woman he loved walk into his home and immediately connect with his daughter, and felt something settle in his chest. Something that felt like the future finally making sense. If this moment right here doesn't make you believe in love and second chances and finding family in unexpected places, I don't know what will. Share this with someone who needs to hear that beautiful things can come from awkward beginnings. The next 3 months were a complicated dance of falling deeper in love while navigating the very real challenges of dating your boss. Sophia was meticulous about maintaining professional boundaries at work. No special treatment for Jake, no couple behavior in the office, no indication to staff that their relationship had fundamentally shifted. Some days this was harder than others. You know, Jake murmured during a particularly long strategy meeting where Sophia was presenting and looking unfairly attractive while doing so. It's very difficult to concentrate on quarterly projections when I know what you look like first thing in the morning. Mr. Reyes, do you have a comment on the strategy? Just that it's excellent. As always. Priya, sitting beside him, muttered, smooth, in a tone that suggested the opposite. At home, though, they were building something real. Sophia became a regular presence at Jake's house, dinner on weeknights when she could escape the office early, Sunday afternoons at the park with Emma, quiet evenings after Emma's bedtime when they could just be together without professional masks or parental responsibilities. Emma adapted with the resilience children so often have. She still talked about her mother, kept Rebecca's picture on her nightstand, asked questions sometimes about what Mommy was like, but she also began making room for Sophia in a way that made Jake's heart ache with gratitude. Sophia taught me how to make pancakes, Emma announced one Saturday morning. The trick is not making them too big so they flip easy. Is that so? And she said next week she'll teach me eggs, but not the scrambled kind because scrambled is for babies. The kind where the middle is still gooey. Over easy. Yeah, that's the grown-up kind. Emma looked at him seriously over her pancake-covered plate. I like Sophia. Daddy? I like her too, sweetheart. Do you love her? Jake considered how to answer. Emma was 7, but she was sharp, and she deserved honesty. Yes, I do love her. Like you loved Mommy? Different from how I loved Mommy, but yes, real love. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I think Mommy would like her. Because Mommy wanted us to be happy, and Sophia makes you happy. I can tell because you do that thing with your face. What thing? The smiley thing. When you look at her. It's the same thing you used to do with Mommy. Jake pulled his daughter into a hug that he hoped conveyed everything he couldn't say. That she was wise beyond her years. That her acceptance meant the world to him. That Rebecca would indeed have wanted this, would have wanted him to find joy again, instead of drowning forever in grief. Sophia had her own adjustments to make. She'd been independent for so long, married to her work, protective of her solitude, convinced that her demanding career left no room for relationships. Learning to be part of a family meant learning vulnerability, which didn't come naturally. I don't know how to do this, she admitted one night, curled next to Jake on the couch after Emma had gone to bed. The domestic thing. I never had models for it. My parents' marriage was complicated. My mother died before I learned how adults really love each other. Nobody knows how to do it until they do it, Jake said. Parenting, relationships, life. We're all just making it up as we go. What if I mess up? What if I hurt Emma somehow? You won't. And if you do, we'll handle it together. That's what partnership means. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. I never thought I'd have this, a family, Someone who knows my flaws and chooses me anyway. Your flaws are pretty minor. You work too much. You forget to eat when you're stressed. You have an inexplicable fondness for that terrible coffee from the cafe downstairs. That coffee is excellent. That coffee tastes like burnt disappointment. She laughed, and Jake pulled her closer, marveling at how natural this felt. How right? He proposed 6 months later. The moment wasn't planned. They were at the park where he'd taken Emma on their first outing with Sophia. Watching his daughter race between playground equipment with the boundless energy children seemed to summon from nowhere. The autumn leaves were turning, painting the trees in shades of gold and copper and red, and Sophia was laughing at something Emma had said, and Jake looked at her and knew with absolute certainty that this was it. Marry me. Sophia turned to him, eyes wide. What? Marry me? I don't have a ring yet. I haven't planned a speech. But I'm sitting here looking at you with my daughter, and I can't imagine any future that doesn't include exactly this. You. Me, Emma. A family. Forever? Jake, you don't have to answer right now. I know it's sudden. I know we have complications to figure out with work and Wes, logistics, and maybe we should talk about timeline and, wait, did you say yes? Sophia's smile was radiant. I said yes. I love you. I love Emma. I want this life more than I've wanted anything in my entire overachieving career. Emma, with the supernatural timing of all children, chose that moment to run over. Why does Sophia look like she's gonna cry? Is she sad? No, sweetie. Jake lifted his daughter onto his lap. Sophia's not sad. Actually, I just asked Sophia a very important question. What question? I asked her to marry me, to become part of our family. Officially. Emma's eyes went huge. Like a mom. Like she would be my. She couldn't quite finish the sentence. Sophia reached out and took Emma's hand. Only if you want me to be Emma. I could never replace your mommy, and I would never try. But I love your daddy very much, and I love you, and I would be so honored to be part of your family in whatever way feels right to you. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing with the seriousness she brought to all important matters. Then she looked at Jake. Can I still have mommy's picture by my bed? Always, sweetheart. Always. And I can still talk about her. Even though Sophia's here? Sophia wants you to talk about mommy. She knows how important those memories are. Emma nodded slowly. Then she turned back to Sophia and extended her arms in the universal child gesture for, pick me up. Sophia lifted her, and Emma wrapped her arms around Sophia's neck and said, very quietly, okay, you can marry us. Sophia's eyes met Jake's over Emma's head, and they were both crying now. This little family formed from grief and accidental texts, and the courage to love again. The wedding was small, just close friends and family, held in a garden venue that Emma helped choose because it had the best flowers and also a fountain, which is very important. Emma served as flower girl and ring bearer, and she informed everyone who would listen, the assistant bride. Jake's parents flew in from Arizona, already completely in love with Sophia from months of video calls where Emma had insisted on including them in family dinners. Sophia's sisters came from various parts of the country, hugging Jake like he was already their brother, teasing Sophia about finally finding someone who could handle her. During the reception, Jake found himself standing slightly apart from the crowd, watching Sophia dance with Emma. His daughter was standing on Sophia's feet, giggling as they twirled in an ungainly but utterly perfect waltz. His wife, was laughing down at her, saying something that made Emma throw her head back in delight. You look like a man who can't believe his luck, Derek said, appearing beside him with 2 glasses of champagne. That's because I am. You know this all started because you can't text properly, right? Autocorrect or fate? I choose to believe fate. Derek snorted. You're getting sappy in your old age. I'm getting happy in my old age. There's a difference. On the dance floor, Emma spotted Jake and waved frantically for him to join them. He handed his champagne to Derek and walked toward his family, his wife and his daughter, the 2 people who made up his entire world. Daddy, watch! Sophia taught me a spin. Emma executed a wobbly spin that almost sent her tumbling, but Sophia caught her with practiced ease, and all three of them ended up in a laughing tangle of arms and wedding dress fabric and pure, uncomplicated joy. Later that night, after the reception, after they'd carried a sleeping Emma to the hotel suite where Jake's parents would watch her for the next few days, Jake and Sophia stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights. "Thank you," Sophia said quietly. "For what?" "For the text. For being brave enough to stay even when it was embarrassing. For seeing something wrong at work and caring enough to fight for me. For sharing Emma. For all of it. You know what I was thinking about earlier? During the reception." "What?" "Rebecca. I was thinking about how she always told me that if anything happened to her, she wanted me to be happy. Not just content, not just surviving, but actually happy. And I spent 3 years thinking that was impossible, that my capacity for happiness died with her. And now I think maybe she was right. Maybe happiness isn't a finite thing that gets used up. Maybe the love we had created room in my heart for more love, not less." Sophia leaned into him, and they stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city sparkle below them. "I'm going to be a good stepmom," she said finally. "I'm going to mess up sometimes because I'm still learning, but I'm going to try every single day. You're already good at it. I'm adores you her. She's remarkable, Jake. The way she's handled loss, the way she loves so openly despite everything, she's the bravest person I know. She gets that from her mother. She gets it from you too. You showed her that loss doesn't have to close you off from the world. That's a gift that'll shape her entire life." Jake kissed his wife, he still couldn't quite believe it, and felt gratitude so profound it almost hurt. 3 years earlier, he'd been a broken man going through the motions of living. Now he had a family, a life full of French braids and board meetings and Sunday pancakes, and the absolute chaos of loving people who loved you back. All because he couldn't properly text. Sometimes, Jake reflected, the universe had a better sense of humor than he gave it credit for. And if you're watching this thinking that love like that doesn't happen in real life, let me tell you something. Every story I tell comes from somewhere real. The accidental text, that actually happened to my brother. Different circumstances, different people, but the core truth, that sometimes our mistakes lead us exactly where we're supposed to be, that's as real as it gets. Life isn't about avoiding awkward moments or protecting ourselves from embarrassment. It's about showing up anyway. It's about having the courage to feel things, even when feeling things is terrifying. It's about building families from scratch when the ones we had get broken. Jake and Sophia didn't get a perfect story. They got a messy, complicated, beautiful story that included grief and fear and an incredibly ill-advised workplace romance. And it was better than perfect because it was real. So here's my question for you. What's the scariest truth you've been avoiding? The thing you haven't said because you're afraid of how it might change everything. Maybe it's time to say it. Maybe your accidental text moment is waiting for you. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what part of this story hit you the hardest. I read every single comment, and I love knowing that these stories find people all over the world who need to hear that second chances exist. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in love stories. And thank you for letting me share this one with you. Now go tell someone you love them. Even if it's terrifying. Especially if it's terrifying. That's where all the best stories start.